Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name is Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in today on a Tuesday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How you doing today on this Tuesday?
I'm very good. I'm anxious to get into these topics. We got some good ones tonight, boy.
Yeah, we got a lot of good topics to talk about. Some that I think we're going to be a little bit surprised about. Some maybe not, depending on what fan base you're a part of. Maybe some that are not that shocking. Some that are definitely are. We'll get into that. But let's start with our first topic of tonight's show, which is, according to a report from the New York Post on Saturday in his final meeting with the Jets organization, Rodgers reportedly, according to the New York Post, pleaded with the Jets to remain their quarterback for at least another year or two, and that's when the Jets informed him that they would be looking elsewhere at the quarterback position. And apparently it brought Rodgers into a really dark place after hearing that. Not exactly a report you want to hear, especially if you're a fan of Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure Rodgers wasn't feeling that great either, but here's my question to you. Are you surprised that even with Rodgers seemingly trying to be a team player for maybe the first time in his career, kind of bending the knee and saying, please take me back, and are you surprised that the Jets ended up not taking him back?
At first, I thought about this a lot, and I said, you know what, they're going to cave and let him come back, and because they don't have many other options, and they still don't. I don't know what they're going to do, actually. But then I thought about it more, and I thought, you know what, they did the right thing. And I think the reasons, he did aggressively urge the Jets to keep him for 1 or 2 more years, apparently. He was talking 2 more years. Once the decision was made, he reportedly accepted it and slipped into the darkness for a few days. I don't know. He may still be there. I don't think it's a surprising result, and I think ultimately it's probably the best result for the Jets, even though who the hell's going to play quarterback for them next year? I have no idea. We may talk about that a little bit here. He said several times that he enjoyed his time with the Jets and wanted to continue his career there. I can understand why wouldn't he? He was the boss there. I mean, he was telling everybody what to do. He was like the de facto GM, the de facto head coach when Saleh was there, and even after that. So, why wouldn't he want to be there? I would have thought that would have dawned on him, and that's going to change a lot here with the new brass. And the new brass decided to go in a different direction, which really isn't a surprise, I don't think, given the poor record that the Jets had, the locker room problems. There were apparently a lot of players didn't like Aaron Rodgers very well. And the bad press he got, my God, after they started losing, the New York media were all over his case. They wanted him out. And so he is gone. I think, the decision may have it probably has something to do with his age as well. He's going to be 41. The fact that he didn't have his best season in 2024, although he did play reasonably well down the stretch. And also, I think the philosophical differences probably played a much bigger role in the Jets' decision to go in a different direction here. Rodgers said that after 20 years in the NFL, it had altered his perspective on success. He essentially said football is bigger than wins and losses, that the friendships developed inside the building throughout a season are the things that truly endure. Now, come on. How can you say something like that? You're the quarterback. The NFL is about winning.
Whoa.
It's all about winning.
Whoa.
It's not about this. Not about cozy friendships in the locker room. That's not what it's about. It's about winning. So that's not the attitude that the first-time head coach and GM want the face of their franchise to have, for sure. They need to win. And they want a quarterback who shares that desire. I think the new brass, they're not crazy about the attention Rodgers receives. And the brass told him to stop doing his weekly appearances on the Pat McAfee show, where he said a bunch of crazy things, if he was going to stay with the team. Well, he may be a 4-time MVP. Some of the things that come with him being on your team simply wasn't worth it for the Jets and the new brass.
Well, I'll say that, yes, while the NFL is about wins and losses, how much do the media, how much do the fans, how much do we criticize Rodgers in the locker room and then off the field? You never hear a single teammate say anything bad about Tom Brady. And that's because he made it one of his goals in the NFL to be just a casual guy.
Be humble.
Walking up to the 53rd guy and introducing himself as Tom Brady,
right.
like the whole world doesn't know who you are.
He had some humility.
Well, I would say that Rodgers, I don't even believe him when it comes to that. It took him this long to realize that relationships matter. Look at some of your Green Bay Packer teammates. You weren't friends with them.
No, but I think when he first came to the Jets, he was trying to make over his image.
Exactly.
Make over his image, and he went too far. He went too far.
Because even Jets players saying that we need to walk on eggshells when we're around him.
Yeah.
Randall Kite brought all over his buddies. He never tried to really create new relationships with a lot of his teammates. So is it a surprise?
This is what he said, though.
I know. I don't believe it.
He said it in public.
I don't believe it.
Okay.
I don't believe it whatsoever.
Well, do you think winning is more what he was about? What was he about then? Was he about winning? Was he about...
Well, based on his history, he hasn't been doing much of winning.
I know.
He's, 7-9 in his last few playoff games since his Super Bowl? So there's not much winning going on when it comes to Rodgers.
Well, he only won 4 games this past season. He was out there for every game.
Right. So if I'm going to answer the question, surprised that the Jets brought back or did not bring back Aaron Rodgers, my answer is no. He had a horrible cap hit, $37.5 million. They're going to take, I think, actually I have the number here for Spot Track. If they release him, which they'll probably do post-June 1st, we're talking about a $35 million dead cap hit. So it's absolutely brutal when it comes to that. But think about this. You're willing to take that cap hit for him not to play with you. And I agree. There is no real direction that the Jets have at the current quarterback position. We don't know exactly where they're going to go. But in the history of the Jets, they haven't really had any direction. Because if we take a look at their Jets quarterback acquisition since 2013, they've had 22 different quarterbacks. 22. 9 that they drafted, 10 that they signed, and 3 quarterbacks that they traded for. A combined record of 68 and 128. That's 34.6 winning percentage. I mean, this is embarrassing. Utterly embarrassing. And the best one on here is probably Ryan Fitzpatrick, who actually had a great season with Todd Bowles, I believe, is his head coach. But think about some of these draft picks. Christian Hackenberg, Luke Falk, Sam Darnold. During the Jets, he was bad. Mike White was a backup. They signed him. James Morgan. Chris Streveler played a Thursday night game. I still talk about that Thursday night game as Jets fans rooting for the Jets just to get first downs instead of like touchdowns and interceptions. They were rooting just for the Jets to get a first down, which is completely embarrassing. But I think the big question here is how big is Rodgers' market? Because when we first saw him in the NFL season for 2024, he was bad, like really bad. 61% completion percentage, 237.8, that's not bad, passing yards per game, 6.5 yards per pass, touchdown interception ratio. This is the only thing Rodgers has now, is his great touchdown to interception ratio. It was 10-7 this time, a passer rating of 82.2. Now we take a look at weeks 8 to 18. That's where we started to see the improvement that you've talked about in the past. He increased his completion percentage. The passing yards per game dipped a little bit. Yards per pass increased by 0.3 to 6.8. Touchdown interception ratio, more like Rodgers, 18-4. A pass rating of just flat out 97. So is his market massive? No, because I think, honestly, Sam Darnold's going to have a bigger market. Russell Wilson's going to have a bigger market. I think if the Steelers completely decide just to blow up both quarterbacks, Justin Fields, if he hits the open market, he will be a higher needed quarterback, a more sought-after quarterback than Aaron Rodgers will be. I think Rodgers right now is over the hill completely. He's going to be 42 by December. The teams that he has started, or games that he started and finished, his teams have gone they've won 13 of the past 34 games. So he just doesn't win football games anymore. And this season is a lot like 2022 Aaron Rodgers, where it's okay. Is it good? There's times, there's moments, but I saw a bunch of what happened this past year, where they would get late in the game, and then Rodgers would just not have any clutch gene. He actually doesn't have a great clutch gene. He doesn't have a Mahomes clutch gene or a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady clutch gene. He honestly comes up pretty small in some of the biggest moments.
Yeah.
And that's kind of crazy talking about a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I think that let's just say he does go to a team, and it doesn't matter which one, because I don't think he'll find a lot of success. If he starts failing again, shouldn't that affect his legacy? Because at this point, what do we know Aaron Rodgers has? He doesn't win in the playoffs. At this point, he's not even making the playoffs the last 2 seasons that he started at least a decent amount of games with. He hasn't made a Super Bowl since, 2011? All he's got is touchdown interception ratio. That's all he's got.
Yeah, well, I think he'll make his decision sometime soon, whether he's going to play or retire. Teams are continuing now. They're continuing their preparations for free agency as well as the upcoming draft. So this is the period of time where a lot of teams will be making decisions, and he'll want to be in there if he wants to play. My guess is he will want to play. I don't think he's going to retire after the year he had with the Jets and the way his image looks now, which is in the dumpster. I think he's going to have what's happened with the Jets has have a big impact on the roster and the salary cap. It's going to be felt for years. They surrounded Rodgers with his favorite receivers, Lazard, Cobb, and Adams. Cobb retired, and Lazard and Adams likely headed for the exits. They spent Woody Johnson spent $111 million on Rodgers and these three other players, and they combined for a total of 66 games played. So it was a total disaster. From a cap perspective, the Jets are stuck with $64 million in dead charges. Rodgers, $49 million. Adams, $8.4 million. Lazard, $6.6. Rodgers designated as a post 6-1 cut allows the money to be spread over 2 years, but $35 million charge in 2026 is hardly ideal for building the roster. Draft capital's also been affected. Losing the 2023 second-round pick, the 2024 second-round pick, the 2025 third-round pick, the 2023 sixth-round pick. They've swapped first-round picks also with Green Bay, dropping 2 spots. So in return, they got Rodgers and Adams and the 2023 fifth-round pick, which was traded and parlayed into a cornerback, Converse, and tight end, Kuntz. Neither one of them did anything. Bottom line, the Jets went 12-22 in the Rodgers era. I would say probably Garrett Wilson's is a happy camper. He's likely to return now that Rodgers is gone, as he and Rodgers had lots of battles. And Adams will go because he says he's tied to Rodgers, and his $38.3 million cap charges are prohibitive. None of it's guaranteed. They saved $29.9 million by cutting him. The Jets need wide receivers. Maybe Tim Patrick will come over from the Lions now that Aaron Glenn is there. Maybe the Ole Miss quarterback Dart is a potential addition, as Spielman likes him a lot, and he's the senior advisor on football operations. So. It's craziness with the Jets as always. My guess is they'll make the wrong moves, and it will be another tough season.
Well, that record, while it's true, Rodgers only won, and we could technically week 1 of 2023 he started, so he gets the win. But if we're talking about games he started and finished, this was the only season with the Jets. So technically, the Rodgers era really was 5-12. Yeah. But if you want to throw in the cheap Bills win, where it was really Zach Wilson saving the day. Technically, under the Rodgers era of games he started, he's 6-12, but 5-12 for games that he started and finished. So, I would not say that's good. Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle all did better. Joe Flacco was in there. They all did better than Aaron Rodgers with a worse offensive line, fewer weapons because Devontae Adams came over. This is an embarrassment. But if we're talking about Rodgers' market next year, and I've listed 5 teams here. Rodgers would need to go to a team that's ready to win now, and the difference between him going to a team that is ready to win now and with the Jets is, while the Jets were ready to win now, Rodgers was going to be that Tom Brady and Matt Stafford piece, where the team is good, it just needs you to take them up just another level. Rodgers did not take him up that next level. So he needs to go to a place, maybe like Minnesota, where everything is so good, or even San Francisco, who I think has the third best odds, is so good that you just need to be the game manager and you could win. But these teams, Steelers, he would be the savior. Raiders, be the savior. Giants, savior. Titans, savior. Browns, savior. All these 5 teams, while the Steelers are the number 1 odds to go get him, he would be their savior. Because once the defense gets tired by week 10, Rodgers needs to pick it up, because since week 11, I think the Pittsburgh offense averaged 14 points a game with Russell Wilson. So you're going to need to pick it up an entirely different notch. And who knows that Mike Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers, their heads might not clash. Who's saying that won't happen at some point? But Rodgers off the field stuff would get in the way of whatever Mike Tomlin's trying to hold on to as sort of a culture.
So you think he's headed to the Steelers?
I'm saying that no matter what, if he goes to the Steelers, he would be the savior. Raiders savior, Giants savior, Titans savior. It wouldn't work. Would Tomlin continue his plus over 500 streak? I'm sure.
Yeah, well, if
but
he
would
follows,
it matter? No.
Brett Favre went from the Jets to the Vikings, so why shouldn't Aaron Rodgers do the same thing?
That wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me, but I'm
and
just saying.
if he lays an egg, that's the reason they can bring in J.J. McCarthy.
That would be an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Rodgers getting benched for J.J. McCarthy if things turn sideways. That would actually be something.
Yeah.
You can't pay a lot of money for him. That's the thing. You can't give him a lot of. Rodgers is done. He's got 1 year left, and that's even if a team wants him.
You know what? He'll go cheap because he wants to.
Rodgers cheap?
He's going to go cheap because he wants to reclaim some of his glory, and his ego is so big that he thinks he can play well. So,
well, if his ego's that big, why wouldn't he ask for every little penny he can get?
Because nobody's going to offer him that much. I don't think he's going to get any big offers. Why would he?
I completely agree with you on that.
I mean, he's on one wheel. His Achilles injury. Whether he's really fully recovered from that. He didn't play that well in the past year, although he did pick it up near the end. He's got to have Devontae Adams. Will be a package deal. He and Lazard.
I'm sure they're going to go.
It's going to be a package deal. Those guys will all show up wherever he's going to play again. And Adams probably is reasonable to pick up. You can probably get him pretty reasonable too. So I think he'll play, and I think he will find a home. Maybe it's the Steelers. My feelings on them. I think they should go with Justin Fields, but maybe the Raiders.
He'd be the savior. Rodgers can't go to a team where he's dependent on to take them to the next level. We just saw that with the New York Jets.
Well, it wouldn't be much to take the Raiders to the next
level. Why
would
you go there? Besides him having the personality to be the Las Vegas Raiders quarterback, why would he go there? Unless you think Devontae Adams
just to play well, just to play. Oh yeah, well that's a good point.
You think he wants to go back?
No,
to that
probably wouldn't happen. Wouldn't happen.
To be fair, Antonio Pierce is not there.
True.
Still got the same owner. You also have a brand new GM. So if you had an issue with Tom Telesco, he's not there either.
Yeah, you have Tom Brady as executive there. So, and you have the new head coach,
Pete Carroll.
Yeah. He's a very seasoned veteran, so he might know how to handle it. I think Pete Carroll will want Russell Wilson. All
I know, Rodgers just had his second lowest yards per game in his career, fourth lowest completion percentage, sixth lowest passing touchdowns, and the tie for the third most interceptions of his career.
Yeah, he made some.
That's with a superstar wide receiver one in Garrett Wilson to start the season off, then got Devontae Adams, his buddy, and with an upgraded offensive line that was ranked in the top 10 to start the year. And you had Breece Hall healthy, who was one of the more dynamic running backs. And you had the number one graded defense and ended up being, I think, the number 7 defense in the NFL this year. And you went 5-12.
You had a crap coaching staff.
But right? that's on Woody Johnson. You shouldn't have fired Robert Saleh.
No, I agree with that.
Okay, let me bring up the Rodgers
and
numbers
I think
again.
Rodgers had something to do with that, too.
Saleh got fired during this span. I think, game 5 it was, or was week 3 or 4 or something like that. He got fired in the span of Rodgers throwing an interception, went over to London, played the Vikings, threw a pick 6, threw 3 interceptions in that game, and Woody Johnson's mad about Robert Saleh? It doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. But then again, it's the Jets. They've had 22 quarterbacks in a little over 10 years. They 9 drafted, 10 signed, 3 traded for.
Who do you think their quarterback's going to be this year?
Doesn't matter. He's going to be terrible. I don't think they're going to go Jordan Travis. I mean, there's actually a report that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on the show. Maybe
they're going to draft Dart.
Maybe.
He's going to be out there throwing darts. He's going to be out there throwing darts.
Yeah, the Jets fans hope. But let's get to our next topic here. We talked about this not too long ago, but the Cincinnati Bengals were one of the most disappointing teams in the NFL during the 2024-2025 season, going 9-8, missing the playoffs with Joe Burrow having a absolutely, maybe potential unanimous MVP type of season. But this offseason looks like the Bengals are hoping to secure their trio of stars with brand new deals, including wide receiver Jamar Chase along with T. Higgins and defensive end Trey Hendrickson. The only issue is their first move looks like they're going to do a franchise tag on T. Higgins and then work with Jamar Chase and Trey Hendrickson trying to get their long-term deals done. But here's the caveat when it comes to this franchise tag. They have until March 4th in order to get this deal done, but if they use the non-exclusive franchise tag, I believe they have a little bit later to negotiate a deal with Higgins. But right now, March 4th
It's
looks
the
like
non-exclusive.
right. So they'll have a little bit later, but March 4th is the tag deadline, and they already said they're not going to let him walk. So last time we saw T. Higgins get franchise tag, he requested a trade. Not a great start to a potential contract negotiation. But here's my question to you: the Bengals are probably the cheapest franchise in the NFL.
Definitely.
Do you believe that the Bengals will be able to get this situation sorted properly and end up by the 2025 season, week 1, having Jamar Chase on a long-term deal, Trey Hendrickson on a long-term deal, and T. Higgins also on a long-term deal?
They're going to try, I guess, but they're off to a horrible start. Why would they do this to T. Higgins? They did it to him last year, and it pissed him off. He sat out the training camp, and he asked for a trade. It was just terrible. And he had actually when he got hurt, and he came back and had a really good season in the games that he played. Well, he's going to say, "Well, you're disrespecting me." I think that even if they say, "Oh, we're going to get a deal done," They didn't last year. They didn't get a deal done for him last year. If they can't reach the deal with him, they place. They got the tag. They're going to put the tag on him for sure. And they have to get the deal done before the 4th of March if they don't want to. Even if they put the tag on him and reach a deal with him to make him happy. If they don't, they have until July 15th. But then they're using the non-exclusive franchise tag, which means another team can come in there and offer him a deal, or multiple teams could offer him a deal. And if he wanted to accept it, then the other team has to give up their first-round draft pick, which is a pretty high price to play for a team like the Patriots, who really wanted T. Higgins.
The Ravens did that with Lamar Jackson, if we remember, a couple years ago. They placed the non-exclusive.
Right. They did that. But nobody wanted to trade their first-round pick
or pay
give
him,
it up.
or
pay
overshot completely.
Which
Lamar,
probably was a mistake for any other team. Look at the way Lamar Jackson has played. There's no deal if he plays for another year under the tag with a 26 point. The new deal, his deal would be $26.2 million, but that's never going to happen because I just think he'll make so miserable for the Bengals if they try to go that route that it will. And he's probably already angry right now. I think the Bengals are trying to. This is another mistake the Bengals are making. I think trying to fulfill Burrow's wishes.
Oh, why is that a mistake?
Well, because that plays into the Aaron Rodgers type of mentality where the player is running the team. The player is running the team. You can't let that happen.
A hot take.
I think Burrow's right. I think he's right, but they shouldn't. He shouldn't be so vocal about it out in the press. I don't think, and I think that the Bengals need to work behind the scenes. They need to get this straightened out pretty quickly. I think it could turn into a real mess.
It's already a mess.
Higgins been really good since 2020 when they drafted him. 2,000-yard seasons, 2 years of 1,000 yards at least, and more than 900 yards in all but 1 year. His 34 TDs, which is pretty good. He's a perfect complement to Jamar Chase.
Absolutely.
They're the two, I think the two are probably you can make an argument they're the best wide receiver duo in the NFL.
Maybe.
One problem here for them is Higgins has an injury history lately with 2 hamstring injuries. He missed 5 games in each of the past 2 seasons, which may have affected management. But now Burrow's running the show, so they're not going to let it bother. They're going to go after him. The offense has been in the top 7 in scoring 3 of the past 4 years. Higgins would be the top wide receiver in free agency if he got that far.
Probably top player.
Franchise tag, as I mentioned, is non-exclusive, so other teams can make offers that the Bengals have to match or let him walk, and they wind up with a first-round pick. Bengals plan to get the long-term deal done, they say, after tagging him. I think this is bad for the Patriots, so they were targeting Higgins probably at least at $30 million a season. I think that's what it's going to take. And how do you do all 3 of those guys if he's going to get $30 million a season? They say he'll take less, or they expect him to take less in the first year, so the team can focus on Chase and Gesicki and Hendrickson, and particularly Hendrickson and Chase. But Gesicki played really well with Burrow. I mean, he played for the Patriots. He was a non-factor. He didn't blow anything.
You can talk about the quarterback and the fact that the scheme was terrible.
Terrible too. But Gesicki looks like a very good very good tight end.
Yeah, I would agree.
The Patriots have $123 million in cap space. They might say the hell with it. We're going to give him the first round pick, and we're gonna take Higgins and give him a big deal. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Robert Kraft's got a lot of egg on his face where the Patriots have been playing last few years, and a lot of it's been the criticism of having no wide receivers that are any good.
I completely agree, but you asked a very interesting question. How are they going to pay for all these guys? Here's my answer. The Eagles are already doing it.
Yeah.
They have 7 guys with over $50+ million contracts. Bengals got 2. And by the way, if you take Orlando Brown Jr., he would be the second lowest on this list. Second low. That means that the Eagles are paying, 6 guys more than the second highest contract on the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah.
And one of them is $255 million, $25 million less than Joe Burrow. And Jalen Hurts didn't need to restructure nothing. Joe Burrow is open to restructuring his contract. So, yeah, while you might say that, Joe Burrow is really running the show here, well, we got to think about what Joe Burrow has done. He just put up an MVP-level type season. He put the team on his back consistently, and we could complain about the early season struggles, but that's something of Burrow's career. So if you want to indict him for that, we have to indict his whole career for not being able to pick it up early in the year. And mostly, besides this year, it was really due to injuries that really hindered the opening of each season for the Cincinnati Bengals. But they need to get this done. There is no excuse anymore. There is no excuse why. You have 3 guys, 2 of which already requested a trade from your team just this prior offseason, one of which is a very, very beautiful compliment to Jamar Chase. And guess what? When both of them are out there, you can't double chase because T. Higgins will explode onto the scene. And Trey Hendrickson just had back-to-back 17.5 sack seasons. You got to start paying these guys. Jamar Chase is going to break Justin Jefferson at, $35 million apiece. According to Spot Track, T. Higgins is worth a little bit over $25 million. My guess is he's going to get very close or reach $30 million per season. And when we take a look at Trey Hendrickson, top-tier pass rushers, they're getting about $30 million a year. But that's okay. That is perfectly okay. When you have a quarterback willing to take less and performs at a very high level, you have a wide receiver, 2 wide receivers that are basically your offense, and you have the only pass rusher that did something, because if you take a look at the team sacks versus Trey Hendrickson, it's 17.5 for Hendrickson and 18.5 for the rest of the team. He basically had half of his team's entire sacks. No other teammate, I think, reached 5 sacks. So you got to start paying these guys. You're the cheapest franchise in the NFL. You have no running game. Your defense was abysmal. So yes, while we might say, we got to have money for the other players. How does Howie Roseman do it? Jalen Hurts, draft pick. Devontae Smith, draft pick. All these guys are draft picks. The top guys are draft picks. A.J. Brown they got from Tennessee, but you just need to hit on a bunch of drafts and you're fine. Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, they were rookies this year. Draft picks. If you can't hit on draft picks, then guess what? Just like a bunch of other teams, you're going to be in this cycle of just, you have some players that are great, you pay a lot of money for, but in totality, you're not going to find a lot of success. So you need to hit on draft picks. That's the number one thing. And even Burrow talked about that. They need players that are young, that are cheap, and that can win. In the big-time moments, they need to win. Because it will not shock me. You wait 2 seasons of this, just back-and-forth nonsense, with general manager, malpractice, and Joe Burrow still being who Joe Burrow is, which is a phenomenal, top 3 quarterback when healthy. Who says he doesn't request a trade?
Yeah.
Or demand at this point, because it seems like every single player on the Bengals now has requested a trade. Jermaine Pratt just requested a trade. T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson last offseason requested a trade. Everybody's gone. You let Joe Mixon walk. Guess what? I'm not saying that Joe Mixon makes them a top 5 rushing team, because I think they were 31st or 32nd last year with him as the primary rusher. But just replacing him for Chase Brown? What are we doing here? Seriously, what the hell are the Bengals doing here?
The biggest problem is on defense.
Yes.
And they fired their DC and they hired a new guy. So that was probably a step in the right direction.
25th
you're right.
total defense.
You're right. They need to get some young talent. They need to do well in the draft. And if they can do that and get these 3 guys signed and maybe find a way to keep Gesicki there. If I were Gesicki, I'd want to stay there. I'd be willing to maybe not take the biggest contract, and would take a couple-year contract, and wind up being. He had a great year this past year. He has 2 more years like that. He'd be in line for a big contract too. So I think they'll find a way to get. I think they'll find a way to get that done. But right now, I'm pretty sure it looks pretty messy because T. Higgins, the franchise tag, didn't sit well with him last year, and I'm sure he's very unhappy about it right now.
And we have to. And I'll make this very clear. The Bengals have never needed a top 10 defense to go far. They made back-to-back AFC Championship games. In 2021, they had the 18th best defense, and in 2022, they had the 16th best defense. So averaging a below-average defense is good enough for Joe Burrow to perform. Mm-hmm. And that's on top of the fact how Joe Burrow had no offensive line basically his entire career. Mm-hmm. So this is not Joe Burrow needs pieces around him like some lesser quarterbacks and some mid-average quarterbacks. He just needs a level of competency. That's it. Well,
I think he also needs a coaching staff there that can find a way to win a game in September.
Yeah.
Come on. This is ridiculous. They were 1-4.
Yeah.
No, in the first 5 games of the year. They were awful. They got beat by the Patriots in the opening game last year. What were they thinking about? It's ridiculous. They have to find a way to win some games in September. They dug a deep hole for themselves. They were 1-4.
Yeah.
Nobody makes the playoffs starting out 1-4, and they proved it. They didn't make it.
Well, since 2021, guess how many wins Joe Burrow has in the first 2 weeks of the season? Since 2021, the first 2 weeks, guess how many wins he has?
2.
1.
1
win in the first 2 weeks since 2021. They don't win in early September.
No.
And most of it is due to Joe Burrow getting hurt in the preseason or in training camp or something like that, and it lingers. But that really is no excuse, because this year he was healthy. You opened the season with a very poor performance against the New England Patriots and Jacoby Brissett. With a team that had no offensive line, that had an offensive lineman in that game get benched, I think, after the first drive in Okorafor, and you lost to Jacoby Brissett. That's bad. That's actually horrific. But I'll give you the Kansas City Chiefs game. You had a defensive player decide, you know what, let's ruin the game for everybody, and on a 4th and 13, get a defensive pass interference call.
Yeah. Then you missed some field goals that were very makeable.
And then you lose to Jaden Daniels in week 3.
Yeah.
But again, Jaden Daniels, that's something, But don't worry, hold on. There was a signing today. Remember that rookie punter that botched the snap against the Baltimore Ravens? They signed him to, I think, a 2-year deal.
All right.
First big signing of the offseason, and it's your rookie punter. Congratulations, Bengals.
Oh,
what are we doing here?
Their ownership is cheap. They didn't have an indoor facility for the longest time. That's pretty cold.
I also believe they don't have an official general manager.
It's pretty cold in the winter out in Cincinnati, man. When you get into December and you don't have an good indoor facility to work with, they finally got one of those. So they've been found out. They've been exposed. Joe Burrow has played a role in that. They've got to make amends here, or I agree with you. Joe Burrow will be wanting to say bye-bye.
Well, I think it would help to get more scouts. They have the fewest amount of scouts in their own division, and they don't have a GM. They just have a director of player personnel in Duke Tobin.
Yeah.
So maybe, get more people on the scouting side of things, make some good deals, actually live up to the level of talent that you currently do have on your roster, because according to the past 2 seasons, the talent wants to leave. So when is it Joe Burrow's time? And by the way, Joe Burrow, I'm sure, wants to be a Cincinnati Bengal for his entire career. Why wouldn't you want to be at this point? You were drafted there. You made a Super Bowl. You beat Mahomes in an AFC Championship game. You're really still the only quarterback in your own conference to really, or besides Josh Allen in the regular season. But you're the only quarterback to disrupt Mahomes and his rhythm. So all Burrow needs is a level of competency. That's it. You can't have the 25th ranked defense in the NFL. Give him the 16th best defense, the complete average defense, and you make the Super Bowl. You make the AFC Championship game. Level of competency. I'm sure that's all Joe Burrow is asking for. We're not trying to be, the San Francisco 49ers or the Baltimore Ravens. Level of competency. That's all the Bengals need.
Yep.
We're going to take a quick break, but coming up, is Kyler Murray out and Danny Dimes in? We'll talk about that, as well as Bucky Brooks at NFL, I believe NFL Network. He ranks his 8 biggest Super Bowl windows. We'll talk about that right after this.
Traveling can be a nightmare. Why? You can't watch your favorite shows abroad. You can't trust public Wi-Fi spots anymore. And when you return, roaming bills kill your vibe. Unless you get a NordVPN and Saley deal. NordVPN will increase your privacy online. And Saley, a global eSIM data app, will save you from those unexpected roaming charges. Grab the 2-year NordVPN deal with 76% off and get up to 20 gigabytes Saley eSIM data gift.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast. Your food podcast. Your mindfulness podcast. Your never thought you'd get this far podcast. And watch those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the comment.
Drop the episode anywhere people listen. And find out who they're cooking with. Where they're finding inner balance. And why they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk where the world listens.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name is Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in today on a Tuesday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic of tonight's show. According to, quote, the PHNX Sports Podcast, Johnny Venerable, the Arizona Cardinal, according to him, the Arizona Cardinals could be looking to bring in Vikings backup and former Giants starting quarterback Daniel Jones. This is what he had to say on his podcast. Quote, the Arizona Cardinals, per sources, called about Daniel Jones multiple times within the last calendar year. General Manager Monty Ossenfort had a significant interest in signing Daniel Jones. We're preparing everybody. Don't be surprised if Daniel Jones is an Arizona Cardinal during free agency. Now, we all know last season, big expectations, got a wide receiver one. They did lose Saquon, but they got Malik Neighbors. They upgraded the offensive line, adding a bunch of picks in free agency. Daniel Jones, a lot of expectations, NFL flat. I think he had 2-8 record, 10 total touchdowns. It was really, really bad. So my question to you is, what does this actually have to say about Kyler Murray's future when we heard the stuff before this year about question marks, stuff like that, contract situations, and now Daniel Jones, apparently he has caught the GM's eye?
I'd say it's a shot across the bow for Kyler Murray. I think they may be questioning their future with Murray, but I think they're really looking for somebody to come in, give him a little competition, make him try a little harder, and a solid backup for a quarterback that has an injury history, which is what Kyler Murray has. I think you look hard at the numbers. You use the Harvey metrics here on grading a quarterback. You're going to say that Kyler Murray beats the pants off of Daniel Jones.
Really?
The Daniel Jones is under my formula where the QBR is multiplied by 1.5 and the passer rating added to that. Daniel Jones had a QBR of 47.8 times 1.5 is 71.7. You add his 79.4%, 79.4 a passer rating. That's 151.1 compared to Kyler Murray, who had a QBR of 66.5.
Wow.
Times 1.5 is 99.75 plus his passer rating of 93.5. That's 193.25. So he beats him.
QBR.
Yeah. So that beats Daniel Jones 193 to 151. And you look at Kyler Murray's rushing yards, 572 yards, Daniel Jones 265. Because Daniel Jones didn't play the whole season. You extrapolate.
That would have made a difference.
If you extrapolate the numbers for Daniel Jones, he would have had. When he was released by the Giants, he had 2,070 yards passing, 8 TDs, 7 interceptions. That extrapolates to almost 4,000 yards passing, 17 TDs, and 12 interceptions, which would be an upgrade over Clayton Tune and Desmond Ridder for sure.
That's fair. Fair.
Which are the two backup quarterbacks for the Cardinals. Now, earlier in the season this past year.
By the way, those 4,000 yards would be a career high for Daniel Jones.
Yeah, but still.
Right. If you do the averages, correct. Yeah.
He did start out okay this year. Even you were saying this year, wow, Daniel Jones is playing okay.
Week 1 was probably the ugliest game I've ever seen Daniel Jones
play. No, but after that, he played a few games.
Okay.
He played
okay.
So, I had done my Harvey formula for quarterbacks back I don't know, was it week 7 or 8?
Week 9, I believe.
Week 9. And I had Kyler Murray was up at number 3 on my formula,
quarterback.
right? But then he fell. He did not play well, and
That
that's why
following week he completely
he was
just fell
terrible.
apart.
The next week, and he didn't. He made a bunch of mistakes after that too, and so his QBR, which was I think 215 or 16, something like that, was right near the top, right?
Yeah.
But he dropped down to 193. So, he fell off a lot, and I think that has something to do with the Cardinals saying, "Hey, we want to bring in some competition for this guy." They've been, as you said, they inquired multiple times about Jones, and he's going to be a free agent. Murray has 5 years, a $230.5 million extension that he signed in 2022. He's 27 years old. He's gone 14-22 since the Cardinals gave him that deal. They could cut him or trade him next offseason, eating $20 million in dead cap, but save $35.5 million in future cap space. So this is his year. I think that they're souring on him a little bit. They're going to bring in some competition for him. If he doesn't play well, I think they get rid of him at the end of the year.
Well, again, this is the same argument I have with J.J. McCarthy and Daniel Jones being on the Vikings. Is it really competition? That being said, I think we need to take a look at, this is not any bias. This is not any hate towards this particular player. These are just what we call the cold, hard facts. And people are going to get very upset when I reveal that, this situation. But it's okay, because it is the cold, hard facts. Let's do what I love to do occasionally. My mystery quarterback comparison. These numbers are very similar. Daniel Jones has a better record, a higher completion percentage, essentially the same amount of total yards per game, fewer total touchdowns, but also fewer total turnovers, and a higher passer rating in the first 60 games of his career versus the first 60 games of this other player's career. Let's reveal who that other player is. Trevor Lawrence, a guy currently making the second most money in the NFL per year, averaging, that's the next topic. Averaging, I wish I had the graphic here, $275 million for 5 years. That's $55 million per year. To do those numbers. Are we kidding? Are we serious right now? Trevor Lawrence, in his first 60 starts, is basically Daniel Jones. Yeah. Except Daniel Jones has much more mobility than Trevor Lawrence does. One got paid $55 million, or is going to get paid $55 million per year. The other could potentially be on his third team in less than 12 months. I don't understand it, but that's my hope for Daniel Jones and potential worry for Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
You may be bringing in the next, or actually before Trevor Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence 2.0.
Yeah. Well, I think, Daniel Jones' athleticism is probably enough to allow him to play.
That would actually fit the system, though, because they're both mobile quarterbacks.
Yeah, in the system, in the Murray system, I'm pretty sure Daniel Jones can step in and run that. He's a depth option with some potential upside. I think that's probably how the Cardinals are looking for him, and some competition for Kyler Murray to say, hey, listen, Buster, you can't have like 5 or 6 games where you play really well during the season and then, botch a bunch of others. You got to be there every Sunday. And if you're not, guess what? We got Daniel Jones in the wings. We'll give him a try.
Again, is that really saying something?
I think this could be a concern for the Vikings, who prepared for the possibility of Darnold leaving in free agency by bringing on Daniel Jones with the idea that he could be the bridge to J.J. McCarthy. Jones drew rave reviews from the Vikings coaching staff and is viewed as a potential option at quarterback for them. And now, he could be going elsewhere. And there are other places that I think he's a possibility. We just talked about the Cardinals. He's a backup, unless Kyler Murray gets hurt or plays poorly. For the Raiders, he could be, go there to compete with O'Connell. Well, I don't think Gardner Minshew has got a chance there anymore.
They're probably going to draft Shador or whoever.
They probably will draft somebody, but even then, he could be a bridge there. The Browns, Jameis Winston hurt his chances by continuing to throw too many interceptions. Their other quarterback is Dorian Robinson, and Deshaun Watson's out another year because he screwed up his Achilles. He retore his Achilles rolling his ankle. The 49ers, he could be a backup to Purdy. The Dolphins is a backup to Tua. I don't know. Where do you think he'd play the most snaps? I don't know. It's hard to say, but I think he'd probably want to go to the place where he has the best chance to play. To me, it's probably the Vikings as the bridge quarterback if Darnold leaves.
Well, what's really interesting is that Sports Illustrated's Connor Orr predicted that this will be Kyler Murray's last year with the Arizona Cardinals. And I kind of believe that because at some point, right now, he's not worth the money that he was given. His contract was a big question. They gave it to him early, but I know it seems like a steal now, but still, he's not living up to the numbers that he was given. No. And we also heard the contract about, the clause in his contract about watching film. It's not a good look. He tore his ACL. He comes back middle of the year. He plays okay. Right now, Kyler Murray is an okay quarterback. I have the number right here. Bleacher Report gave Kyler Murray the 19th best quarterback in the NFL. So he's below average, which I think is a perfectly reasonable ranking for him. What's interesting is that The Athletic, let's just say that Kyler Murray does end up not being the quarterback. And let's say the Arizona Cardinals try to trade him. The Athletic actually thinks that, and this is what I was hinting at earlier on the show, the New York Jets could be interested in acquiring one Kyler Murray. I just want to get your thoughts on that one. New York Jets, him dressing up in the hunter green, I think that's what they call it.
When? After next year?
No, this year. Trading
for Kyler Murray.
Kyler Murray this year.
I personally think it would be a mistake for the Cardinals to rely on Daniel Jones to be their starting quarterback. I mean, as a backup, I think, and a chance to come in if Murray performed poorly, that would be a much better situation for Daniel Jones than go in there as the expected starter because the Cardinals, they missing some pieces elsewhere. I think that they need to improve elsewhere as well. It's not, and I would say Kyler Murray performing poorly under his new contract. Not all of it had to do with just him. I mean, the offense, they didn't have any wide receivers for a while. They didn't. The defense has been porous, so it's a team sport.
Defense
so
was very bad. Yeah.
It wasn't just him. So, would the Jets try to trade for Kyler Murray? Maybe a possibility. I mean, they'd be picking up another big contract, and it would be a big cap hit for the Cardinals. So I think it's more likely next year that Murray's gone. I think they're going to hang on to him for this year.
But if you could bring in, I'll bring it up again, Trevor Lawrence 2.0. One was making $40 million per year, the other's making $55.
No, Trevor Lawrence hasn't played well.
I agree
right?
with you.
So why do you want to bring in someone who's not going to play well? That's comparisons to a quarterback who's not done well and is way overpaid, right?
We can both agree on that.
Yeah.
He is not worth the $55 million, but that was a projection. But you know what? Hey, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. They got Liam Cohen now as their head coach. But again, Kyler Murray's making decent money. It's over $40 million per year.
Yeah.
But he's not living up to it.
No.
He's a decent quarterback. Is he what people thought he would be? No.
He's got the athleticism.
He
he's
has
got
the
the
arm.
talent. He's got the arm.
Absolutely.
He's got the ability to run. His head is the issue. He didn't stay in the game for the whole season. That's the problem. And by I think it's a smart move to bring in somebody that he'd fear a little bit as being competition for him. That might make him play better down the stretch.
Well, we have to realize that after the bye week, they lost against Seattle twice, which again,
they fell apart.
They were favored, I think, at Seattle, and that's the one that I picked. Like,
I picked them. I thought they were going to win a bunch of games.
Right, and I said, how the hell are they favored? And then when they were at home, they were favored again. Those were the two easiest Harvey Hot Hand picks I had all season.
Yeah,
because it's what are we doing here? So they lost those two games. They beat the Patriots. They lost to the Panthers in overtime, and then with the 49ers benching everybody, they blew them out. So Kyler Murray's okay. He's okay. They went, 2-5 out of the last 7 games. 2-5 to close out the year with Marvin Harrison Jr., with Trey McBride, with James Conner. He's not a great quarterback. He's not going to elevate you anywhere. I think it was a mistake signing him to that deal. But let's move on to our next topic here, which is Bucky Brooks wrote an article recently naming his top 8 Super Bowl windows. This is the list of the 8 Super Bowl contenders that he had. Eagles having the biggest one, then Lions, Chiefs, Ravens, Packers, Chargers, Commanders, Texans. There's a couple that are missing here, but I want to get your opinion. Do you agree or disagree with Bucky Brooks' list of Super Bowl windows?
I mostly disagree with it, I must say. Let's just go through it here. Put the list back up there.
Sure.
Okay, so the Eagles, yeah, I mean, they're bringing back all their players. They're happy. They won the Super Bowl. Last time they won the Super Bowl, they went 9-8 the following season. But I think giving most of their players back, I agree with the Eagles being in the number 1 spot here. The Lions, I'm not sure you can put them at number 2. I mean, they have big questions at offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. They're both brand new, and those coaches were very important to the Lions' success. Will Hutchinson and McNeil return to form? That's a big question mark. We don't know that, but if they do, then that helps a lot. And I do think they'll be a good team. But do they rank number 2 to go to the as a possibility of going to the Super Bowl? I think that's a question mark. The Chiefs, Mahomes has to return to Super Bowl form and play better in the season. He had his worst season this year. Their running game is terrible. Their offensive line is terrible. They have to work on that. Kelsey's old. He may not even come back. The receiver core is questionable. I think a lot of question marks for the Chiefs. I'm not sure I'd put them at number 3. The Ravens, I think at 4, that's very reasonable. They actually could be ranked higher than that, I think.
Higher?
Henry is coming back.
Ooh.
Lamar is going to be, he's still in his prime. They have to make less mistakes in the playoffs if they're going to go far. And I think that's one thing that holds them back a little bit here. They haven't been that successful in the playoffs recently. The Packers, Jordan Love, he didn't play as well this year as he did down the stretch last year. He was great down, and that's why he got this giant contract too.
Yep.
And do they need a wide receiver 1? Maybe that would help. They have the youngest team in the NFL still. That might be a little bit of a problem for them. But they have great coaching. And I do think they should be in the discussion. At number 5, I'm not so sure. The Chargers, I'm a little surprised that they're here given some of the teams that aren't. They played poorly against the Texans. They were terrible against the Texans. Justin Herbert, awful. They need more help at wide receiver. I mean, come on. Now, they have McConkey, who's great and is going to have a nice career, I think. But they got to have somebody else. Quentin Johnson, he can't hang on to the ball. They have to find a much better wide receiver if you're going to have him in this discussion. Dobbins may leave too. He's a free agent, so the running back situation's a question mark. The Commanders at number 7, come on, they went to the NFC Championship game last year, and they have Jaden Daniels, who was the Rookie of the Year, could have been in the MVP discussion. They need another top wide. If the Commanders are going to go get another top wide receiver, maybe Cooper Kupp. They have $75 million worth of cap space, so they can improve themselves. I think they should be ranked higher than number 7. The Texans, they need another elite wide receiver, too. Are they going to try to bring Diggs back? I doubt it. He had the ACL injury. They need someone to complement Collins. Tank Dell is probably not going to be in there. He dislocated his kneecap. So, his 8 list, I think that there's some teams on here that should be replaced by, how about the Buffalo Bills?
That's what I was
How come they're not on this list? I mean, the Bills, they made it to the game against the Chiefs.
AFC Championship game,
Yeah, AFC Championship game. And they weren't even picked. That there was a doubts that they would even make the playoffs because they were seen as a rebuilding year.
Right.
And look what they did. And they had a bunch of young players that really stepped up who will be even better next year. And they've got the draft to pick up a few more. So I see the Bills should be on this list. How about the Broncos? Huh? They made the playoffs last year.
Super Bowl window, though?
The Knicks is, I think, you're talking 8 teams, right?
Yeah.
That be in the window?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't the Broncos be in the window?
I'm not disagreeing with you.
I
would
think,
take them over the Houston Texans.
Yeah. So, and Knicks is going to have another year under his belt. So I think, everything looks good and they have a great defense. I think the Broncos should be on the list. The Steelers, hey, they make the playoffs every year. They make the playoffs every year. If they go my route and they bring Justin Fields to be their quarterback and they emphasize the run, they go get a player like Deebo Samuels to be a wide receiver to complement Pickens, I think the Steelers should be on the list. And how about in the NFC?
Oh, that's the AFC.
This is all AFC.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
No, it's not. This has got the Packers on it. This is eight teams Super Bowl.
You were on the AFC. My fault.
That's my AFC. Those 3 teams.
Yeah.
And how about the Vikings? The Vikings aren't on this list.
Oh, come on.
Come on, how come the Vikings aren't on this list?
I could tell you why.
They only lost a couple of games last year, and their prospects still look very good. They've hit the draft. They're going to pick up some more players, and they have a great defense. They have a great defensive coordinator. So I don't know why they're not on the list. The Rams are not on the list.
They're about to lose everybody.
I don't think so. They're going to lose
Cooper
everybody.
Kupp and Matt Stafford apparently.
I don't know. Matt Stafford, we don't know what's going to happen with him.
That's true.
How about the Buccaneers?
Oh.
How come they're not on the list? They made I'm talking about Super Bowl window 8 teams.
Right.
How come the Buccaneers aren't on the list?
So okay, so is that it? Do you have another team?
Those are my teams.
You're actually forgetting a team actually that I have. Actually, you're forgetting 2 teams actually.
Oh.
So based on you have 6 teams that
aren't on the list.
Right. So here's my question: would any of those teams replace any of these 8?
Yes.
So give me your 8 Super Bowl windows then. You don't need to do it in numerical order. Just give me a list of 8 teams that have the biggest Super Bowl window.
I got the Eagles.
Okay.
I got the Lions.
Okay.
I got the Chiefs, and I got the Ravens.
So
I think the other 4, and I have the Commanders. Okay. The other 3 I have question marks about, and I replace them with the Bills.
Okay.
The Broncos and the Vikings. Those would be the 3 I would replace them with.
Got it. So that's the new one. Okay. You're forgetting about 2 teams. One AFC, one NFC. So for me, yes, I actually disagree with this entirely. I actually think just based on luck, drop the Ravens down a little bit. Just drop them down. Because it seems like whenever they get to the playoffs, something bad happens, like drops, turnovers, play calling all of a sudden goes completely against what they normally do and succeed at. Check last year's AFC Championship game. They were the number 1 running team for several years on end with Greg Roman. They were still the number 1 or close to the number 1 running team first year with Todd Monken. I'll fact check that really quickly so nobody in the comments comes after me. They were the number 1 running team last year, and what did they do? They focused way on the pass instead of the run against the Chiefs defense that wasn't good against the run. The running backs ran it, I think, 6 times. The play calling sometimes doesn't make a lot of sense when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens in key games. So for that reason, I'm not saying that they'll never be able to, although I did predict Lamar never wins a Super Bowl. They should come down at least for the Super Bowl window just because something always happens in the playoffs. Something always does. Packers, they're still a very young team. They've only won, they've made it to the playoffs back-to-back years, or I'm pretty sure they made it this past year, but they did. But you're still too young, too inexperienced to get over the hump, and your wide receiver core is not as dominant as it could be. So for that reason, I kind of agree with you there. The Chargers, there's a reason why there's a term called chargering. Something always tends to go very poorly in some key moments, like the past 2 playoff games, where the opening drive for the Texans, they fumble. You get it on the Texans' 33-yard line. You move, I think, a grand total of like 11 yards. It's terrible. You can't have that happen. So you need more talent anyway. The Commanders should be in the top 4. With a rookie quarterback and a roster that went 4-13, that you've completely changed in the first year to go 12-5, you make the NFC Championship game, and you're not even in the top 4 of teams. So I think you need to be much higher if you're the Commanders. The Texans are out of it. You're in the worst division in football. Yes, C.J. Stroud made the playoffs twice and won a playoff game twice. But you have currently no great offensive line. Your wide receiver core didn't gel nicely. Your defense was hit or miss, and then late in the season, it was a hit. The sacks started to pick up. Joe Mixon is a nice piece, but there's been some issues there, and C.J. Stroud just did a sophomore slump. So will he rebound? Potentially. So my 2 teams, besides the Bills, because I do think they deserve to be a part of this, is the San Francisco 49ers. Are we sure that when CMC gets healthy, if they keep Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk comes back. What are you calling Brandon Ayuk for? Brandon Ayuk comes back, and everybody's healthy again. Who says they can't? Who says they shouldn't be at least in the window? I'm not saying they're knocking on the door. I'm saying they're looking through the window.
No,
and the last one, if somehow they get it right, and I want your reaction for this one, if they just get it right, Cincinnati Bengals.
Okay, well, I agree with Cincinnati. I should have had them on my list. I don't agree with San Francisco, but there's too many ifs in there. You put so many ifs. Debo's gone.
First of all,
Debo is gone.
Well, first of all,
he's going to be
Brandon
traded.
Ayuk's under contract.
Brandon Ayuk has got a bad knee injury. He's not going to come back in week. It may take him till week 12 to
I don't think it's
back.
going to be that long.
It's going to be a while. And the other players, the other wide receivers are very young.
Ricky Pearsall, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Jennings is young.
But
as well.
CMC
is
having Achilles tendonitis in both your legs, that's an issue.
Okay, and he's got a lot of mileage on those legs too. I think he's over the hill now.
Well, people keep talking about the MVP who could have been in Brock Purdy. Show me.
You know what?
I
still think he'd be a good player. He's not a player that can carry that you should count on to carry you.
Thank you. That was my whole argument last year. I see one. The Steelers, there is no way because they haven't won a playoff game in like 8 years. And it's the same rinse and repeat process. Mike Tomlin focuses on heavy defense. And when the defense is not if, but when the defense finally gets tired because it's a human thing.
So who do you replace these teams with? What are you going to go with?
Completely,
the Bills. Don't you think the Bills should be on this list?
Here's what I'll do. Swap out Denver and Minnesota because Minnesota is going to have either J.J. McCarthy, Daniel Jones, or Sam Darnold at quarterback. None of those quarterbacks are going to lead you to the Super Bowl. None of them will probably get you to the NFC Championship game. Denver.
You don't think they'd be better than the Texans or Green Bay?
Well, I'm just taking I'm doing it now. I'm saying why Minnesota and Denver, they're not going to be in the Super Bowl window yet. Denver needs a better running game. They need a better tight end situation, and they need another wide receiver to help out Cortland Sutton.
You don't think Denver's better than the Texans?
I'm replacing the 49ers and the Bengals in their place.
Okay.
I agree with Buffalo should be in there. That's what you agree on.
What are your 8 then?
So I have the exact same list as you where it comes to Philly, Detroit, KC, Baltimore, Washington, Buffalo. I'm taking out Denver. I'm taking out your Minnesota Vikings. I'm putting the Cincinnati Bengals and the San Francisco 49ers in place of them. Denver, was I not the biggest Bo Nix fan on this show? Probably in the vast amounts of sports media before the season started, I was a big Bo Nix fan. They need a better running back situation. They were not an effective running team. They need a better tight end situation. And you love Marvin Mims, and I agree with you. He made some big plays, including Vele as well. He also made a couple big plays. But you need another difference maker, I want to say, at the wide receiver position, which Deebo Samuel could be. Chris Godwin would be a beautiful piece. Because I think right now, T. Higgins and Chris Godwin, they're wide receiver ones, but in situations where they have to be the wide receiver two. Because Chris Godwin's not better than Mike Evans. T. Higgins is not better than Jamar Chase. Deebo Samuel, he's an interesting piece because he's that utility receiver where he could play wide receiver. He could take the ball out of the backfield and stuff like that. He's a nice little piece to have. So for me, who I'm replacing, I'm taking the chart. Oh, that's interesting. Taking the Packers and the Texans out. Actually, I'm taking all three out. I'm taking the Chargers, the Packers, and the Texans. They're all out.
Okay, and who?
Because right now the Chargers, their defense was good. But you had trouble stopping the run. We just saw Lamar
I think the
Jackson.
Chargers' defense is going to be tougher. The Bosa is a question mark, and
Khalil Mack currently is not even on the roster.
Mack is probably not going to play for them.
Right. So that could change.
Yeah, and Justin Herbert to me is a little bit of a question mark.
I agree. That's why I said he moved from an A- to like a B- in my mind.
But part of it, the problem there is his wide receiver core. If they have a much better wide receiver core, that will help him some. But he made some very bad decisions in that playoff.
I agree. I would also say, though, I think he's going to be not really effective next year either. I hate Greg Roman as an offensive coordinator. Because if you don't have a good running game, you're screwed. I brought up the stat a while ago. His offenses were bottom of the league when you didn't have an effective running game. The only 3 losses that the 49ers had when they went 13-3, I think during their Super Bowl run with Colin Kaepernick, was when they rushed for under 100 yards. That's how Greg Roman gets the success. If you could run for 100 yards or more, you'll have success. But if you don't have an effective running game, you lose football games. That's scheme. That's Greg Roman. Think about this. The reason why we didn't believe Lamar Jackson was a competent pocket passer was because his passing game never developed because Greg Roman focused on running the damn ball all the time. Which made Lamar Jackson shine because he was the insane dual threat quarterback and whatnot. But Greg Roman being Justin Herbert's offense coordinator, I think is a massive detriment to the team.
I still want to know, what is your list?
So my list is the exact same thing as yours when it comes to Philly, Detroit, KC, Baltimore, Washington, Buffalo. Okay. That's it. You have Denver, Minnesota. I don't. I have Cincinnati and the 49ers in.
Okay.
I agree with you, though. Chargers they don't have a window yet. They still have too many pieces that need to be moved around. The Packers don't have the experience. They're the youngest team in the NFL, and the Houston Texans also have a lot of moving pieces that they need.
Wide
and they're incredibly
receivers.
young.
Wide receivers problem there.
Well, I would say that Stephon Diggs, he might be gone. I'm sure he's open to returning, but he was on a one-year deal.
Why would you pick him up again?
He got hurt early in the year.
He's got an attitude, and he's on one wheel. I would say goodbye to him. Let him go to free agents.
So then currently, if Tank Dell is still banged up by week 1, you're stuck with Nico Collins. And I think
go get Cooper Kupp. Go get him.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Oh, I think Washington may also inquire about him.
Oh, sure, they should.
Patriots may inquire about him.
The Washington should go after Debo. Debo's gone, Nate. He's not going to be. He's not going to be there. He already asked for Trey.
Oh,
we went over this.
I agree.
And it makes sense for him to be gone there
for
both the team and him.
We said during the season that he was probably going to be either released or traded.
He had a poor season. He didn't have a very good season.
I mean, he was really their only major threat with CMC being down, Ayuk gone, Ricky Pearsall being the wide receiver too, after getting shot and then coming back, about a quarter way through the season.
Jennings had a good year.
He had some insane games this year. He's also a great receiver for him. So, and that adds to my point. You have Juwan Jennings as well.
I think Cincinnati. Cincinnati should be on the list. The 49ers, maybe. I think they're on a marginal.
So then if you think Cincinnati should be on the list, out of Denver and Minnesota, who are you swapping? Okay, if Cincinnati was on your list, would they be including your 8?
I would have after hearing your analysis, I think I would I would take the Chargers off, and I would take the Texans off.
Well, you already have those.
Green Bay off, and I would go with the Bills, the Cincinnati, and
Denver, Minnesota is the last 2 you got.
And I would say the Vikings instead of the 49ers.
Interesting. So you're trusting J.J. McCarthy / Sam Darnold / Daniel Jones to make it, or to at least make the Vikings Super Bowl contenders.
O'Connell is tons away to make the quarterback play well, right? They only lost 2 games. What they was
3 games.
3 games last year.
And then in the first playoff game,
and Sam Darnold was their quarterback, who is a journeyman, right? Right, and he had poor success elsewhere.
Well, do we remember how this playoff game ended up? Was it 9 sacks, 10 sacks, or whatever against the Los Angeles Rams? And he was seeing ghosts out there. He was hurried in the pocket.
It'd be interesting to see where he lands.
It's a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
It's part of sports media, but it's not a bad list.
You really think Kyler Murray is going to go to the Jets?
I don't think he's going to the Jets. I just thought the athletic
won't happen
piece
this year. I just don't think the numbers can make it happen.
I thought the athletic piece was interesting. That's the only reason why I brought it up.
The Cardinals would be in cap hell if
Daniel
they did
Jones, Trevor Lawrence 2.0. Book it. By the way, Aaron Rodgers was ranked 26th in Bleacher Report's top QBs. He was part of the over the hill.
He's still going to be playing next year. I guarantee it.
I mean, that's what he wanted the Jets. He was pleading on one knee, saying, "Please take me back."
Do you think he cried?
No, he went to his darkness retreat for a couple of days and then emerged was a new man. I don't know. Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence 2.0. Book it. I mean, let me bring it up just for posterity. Look, facts. I mean, the first 60
Trevor
starts,
Lawrence is overpaid.
The first 60 starts, they're identical. They're
overpaid.
identical.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
That's just the way it is. And by the way, Daniel Jones didn't play most of the seasons anyway. So he was banged up most of it. Yeah, the neck injury, then the ACL injury, then he got benched, nearly 2/3 out of this season.
Yeah, but that's 60 games against 60 games.
And by the way, that doesn't include this season though, because I think he has 70 games in his career, so it's the first.
I think some teams are intrigued by him. They think
because he has talent. That's the thing. He's mobile.
His problem is his decision making. He does have the talent. He's big. He's mobile.
I'll also say that
he can throw the ball. He's got an arm.
Trevor Lawrence has had in his career. Trevor Lawrence has had.
It's true. Trevor Lawrence
has had better talent, including Brian Thomas this year, who shockingly didn't really do a tremendous job over the course of Trevor Lawrence's tenure. Had a couple of very nice games with Mac Jones, though. Just note that. I'm playing here. All right, that wraps it up for today's episode of the Harvey Hour. We thank you for the constant support as always. No schedule changes. That's always good. The Harvey Hour will remain Tuesdays and Fridays. So we'll be here Friday. We got a lot to talk about. Who's under the most pressure, quarterback-wise, or even coach-wise or player-wise? Who in the NFL is under the most pressure? We'll talk about that on Friday's show. But for this episode of the Harvey Hour, my name's Nathan Harvey. That's my dad, Stephen Harvey. We have been the host of the Harvey Hour. Catch us Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Night, Grandpa.
Traveling can be a nightmare. Why? You can't watch your favorite shows abroad. You can't trust public Wi-Fi spots anymore. And when you return, roaming bills kill your vibe. Unless you get a NordVPN and Saley deal. NordVPN will increase your privacy online. And Saley, a global eSIM data app, will save you from those unexpected roaming charges. Grab the 2-year NordVPN deal with 76% off and get up to 20 gigabytes Saley eSIM data gift.